Hello, it's Tayler Silfverduk, registered dietitian specializing in celiac disease and also fellow celiac of 10 plus years. Today I want to talk about dining out and something that I don't think a lot of people talk about when it comes to dining out, which is grieving all of the ways that dining out has changed for us and the ways that grief can show up when it comes to trying to dine out as a celiac. So if you are looking for a place to have this deeper conversation, this is the video for you. And I'm going to dive into this conversation by starting out with kind of presenting the 5 stages of grief that are kind of widely accepted. And I think there might be an extra one that didn't make it into this graphic. I'm not a mental health expert. I'm a dietitian, but I do oftentimes find myself holding space for this grief when I'm working with other celiacs who are trying to dine out. And often, actually, I have to hold this space for grief in myself sometimes when dining out too, because, even though I've been doing this for over 10 years, it's still sad to me. I still get sad about the fact that, dining out is so much work. It is not the same for me as it is for someone who doesn't have celiac or a strict medical diet. It is not this carefree thing that I can do with my friends and family anymore. It's not this thing that I can lean on when I'm running out of time, or I just feel like, I just want to have a relaxing meal with my partner at a restaurant and not have to worry about anything. It's now something that requires a lot of effort from me almost every single time. And that is something that I do get sad about. As much as I, feel like I'm well practiced in dining out and I've expanded my capacity to do it and I know how to stay safe, it's not the same, and it's never going to be the same. And that is something that I definitely also still have to grieve, and it comes in waves. So I do want to talk about the 5 stages of grief when dining out with celiac, including acceptance, depression, bargaining, anger, and denial. We're going to dive into each of these stages, how they can show up, what they might look like. And as we go through this, I want to encourage you or invite you to comment down below if you've noticed any of these stages of grief when it comes to dining out. If you want to share anything that you're personally kind of grieving or coming to terms with when it comes to going to restaurants as a celiac, I'd love to hear about it in the comments down below. And all of that said, let's dive into some of the ways that grief can show up, maybe in an obvious or less obvious way when it comes to dining out as a celiac. So the first often way that I see grief showing up as a celiac is in denial. Oftentimes I see a lot of celiacs struggling with denial when it comes to dining out. Usually this is something that I think doesn't happen as publicly in the celiac community. I'm usually seeing this more so in one-on-one conversations with clients or in DMs on social media, where celiacs are really struggling with coming to terms with the things that they need to do in order to stay safe at restaurants. So maybe they're doubting how careful they need to be at restaurants. Maybe they think that maybe they think that as long as they say I need to be gluten-free to restaurant staff, that's enough and it's going to be okay. Maybe they are kind of allowing themselves to intentionally eat gluten when they're dining out because it's a once in a blue moon scenario, or it's not something that's happening all the time, or maybe it's someone who is asymptomatic or has mild symptoms of celiac disease and they kind of just are really struggling with the way that this has changed their life, and they're struggling with the new ways that dining out looks like for them. So that's what denial might look like. It's really just struggling with accepting that this is the new normal, unfortunately, when it comes to dining out. The anger phase might show up when dining out if you're feeling really frustrated with the lack of options available. Maybe you're feeling really frustrated about the fact that dessert is something that is extremely rare to find at restaurants. Maybe you're frustrated because you get to order a salad and you really want a burger and everyone else has a burger. That kind of thing is often what anger looks like when grief is showing up. Maybe you're losing patience with restaurant staff. Maybe you're losing patience with your dining party. Maybe you're feeling angry when someone even invites you to a restaurant because you feel like you can't eat there, or you can't eat there, or how dare they should know better. Maybe even feeling angry when a dish can't be modified gluten-free, or there's just not a way to make it work, or there's just not something happened that you weren't expected and you feel really angry. This could potentially be a way that grief is showing up around dining out with celiac disease, and it's a valid thing. Then we get into bargaining with grief and how that might look when it comes to dining out as a celiac. This could look like telling yourself that this one instance of cross contact can't hurt. So maybe you'll just like make sure your food's gluten-free, but you don't really ask for any cross contact precautions, or maybe you don't even double check on cross contact precautions, or maybe you don't even care about the gluten or the cross contact, just this one time of dining out can't hurt. I see this more in the population that is identified as like silent celiac, asymptomatic celiac, or like mild symptoms. They sometimes tend to like try to bargain with how safe they need to be because they don't really get an outward signal, or they don't really have immediate outward consequences, and so the bargaining tends to happen a little bit more here in that way. But maybe I often see it too as thinking that even if you did speak up with restaurant staff, it wouldn't make a difference, so you're kind of just like finding a way to justify not advocating for yourself, not speaking up for yourself, not really trying to do the best for yourself at that restaurant, and or telling yourself that maybe you don't actually have celiac. I see a lot of people bargain around like, do they really have celiac? Do they really need to do this? Do they really need to take all these extra steps? That might be how bargaining is showing up when you are dining out. Then we have depression. When you're dining out with celiac, this could look like feeling like you're oftentimes just kind of fantasizing about how dining out used to be before you were diagnosed, and maybe you're wishing that you'd ordered more pizza, or you'd ordered more dessert, or you'd ordered more of like those gluten-filled delicious things and taken advantage of that then than you are now. Maybe it's thinking like wishing you ordered more fries instead of a side salad all of those times, kind of just like really feeling sad and letting yourself grieve all those things that you wish you had done in hindsight but didn't do because for whatever reason, and now you can't do. It also might be missing specific foods, dishes, restaurants, or like even just missing the way that you used to celebrate at certain restaurants. I know for me, my family is really big at, like, if someone graduates, if it's someone's birthday, if someone got a promotion, whatever, like, celebrating is at a restaurant, and that looks very, very different now, and that was something I really had to grieve. Those restaurants that we used to really frequent for those celebrations had to change, and it's just something that it can weigh really, really heavy, and it can change the way, it can change the traditions in your family, and that can be something that's really uncomfortable, something that's really sad that you have to grieve. And then also depression when it comes to dining out could also just look like avoiding dining out because it's too overwhelming, or feeling like you don't have the energy for it, feeling like it's just not worth it. It could be that. I do want to say a lot of these things could overlap with trauma responses when it comes to dining out. It could overlap with burnout with celiac disease in general. So like, you know, I want to say a lot of this with caution, like it could be a sign of grief. It could be a sign of something else. I know like avoiding dining out can be a sign of a lot of different things. In this case, in this context, I'm talking about it as a sign of depression, but trying to bring awareness and trying to figure out where these things are coming from, what they're doing, how they're helping you or hurting you is important to kind of bring awareness to, and that's why I want to talk about it, especially since I don't feel like the emotional side of things, the like quality of life side of things aren't often talked about. The grief side of things when it comes to celiac isn't often talked about, and I think it's helpful to kind of just acknowledge it sucks and this stuff has changed, and you know, I think a lot of people respond to these things differently, and kind of normalizing the fact that we all have a different response to it. We all have all these like complex emotions around it, and that's normal and okay is I don't know, as someone who really values that, I just want to kind of put that out into the community. So the last stage of grief that I want to talk about today is the stage of acceptance. So when dining out with celiac disease, acceptance might look like telling yourself that dining out is never going to be the same, but you can still do it as a celiac, acknowledging that speaking up in restaurants is hard and you can do hard things, knowing that there is a risk with dining out and you will do and learn everything you need to manage that risk while still honoring your quality of life. That might be what acceptance looks like. It could look very different for every single celiac depending on how celiac is showing up for them and what they need to do in order to stay safe. But for the most part, this is what it could look like. So I do want to say first, I forgot to acknowledge in this video that these stages of grief are based on the Kubler-Ross theory. So I'll leave a link down below more about that if you're interested in learning about the stages of grief. But I also want to acknowledge that the stages of grief are not linear. So at the beginning of this video, I mentioned like even I am still struggling with a lot of these stages of grief in my life on occasion. Like it comes in waves, and that's basically alluding to the fact that like you don't move through all of the stages of grief and then arrive at acceptance and that's it and then you're done grieving. That's not how grief works. Instead, you'll likely find yourself weaving in and out of the stages of grief and finding yourself in acceptance more and more as you allow yourself to process your grief, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to feel the other stages of grief or experience those other stages. So part of processing grief is making sure that you have the tools to get to acceptance, but also that you're allowing yourself to feel all of those different stages. I also want to take this minute to acknowledge that I am not a mental health care provider. I am a registered dietitian. I do like to hold space for grief for all of my celiac clients and course members. But if this is something that you feel like you're really stuck on or you're really struggling with and you want extra help, I do want to take this moment to encourage you to find a celiac specialized mental health care provider. There are a lot of therapists out there who have celiac who will know what you're going through, or they might have another medical diet and kind of understand a lot of that overlap between like what that looks like. Maybe they have a food allergy or something like that. They're also what are known as gastro-psychotherapists, I believe is what they're called. I'll leave information about all of that down below as well. But they really specialize in kind of helping you deal with the mental impacts of gastric conditions and also how those things can overlap and intertwine. So I'll leave information about that down below. I might have mispronounced that. It's been a minute since I've had to say it out loud. But if you're looking for that kind of help, I've had clients find a lot of help accessing those kinds of healthcare providers. So if you're looking for it, I'll leave that down below. And also, if you're someone who is working through your grief, but you're also looking for ways to make dining out feel more manageable, and you want tangible, concrete steps that you can take to help reduce the risk of dining out, I will teach you how to minimize the risks of gluten exposure at restaurants in 4 simple steps. Plus, I'll give you the scripts and examples that I use myself at restaurants and teach all of my clients to use at restaurants in my gluten-free dining course. This is a self-paced course made by me, a fellow celiac of 10 plus years and also a celiac dietitian. If you are interested in learning how to dine out in 4 simple steps, this course includes 4 modules, again covering those 4 simple steps, plus you'll get simulations and practice to help get you confident in each of those modules so that you're really feeling as secure and prepared as possible going into restaurants. Plus you'll get a 60 plus page restaurant dining guide with cheat sheets to common cuisines and restaurant chains in the United States, featuring scripts and more to help it be that much more simple when it comes to dining out. You'll also get a guide, a video training on how to order adult drinks at bars when it comes to restaurants in the United States, because that's a completely different ballgame. You got to look for some other things. It's a completely different ballgame, but I teach you how to do that in this course. I also teach you how to apply these concepts when you are ordering online from DoorDash and Grubhub and things like that. And finally, I'll also talk about if you do go to a restaurant and you feel sick and you're trying to figure out were you glutened or not. I talk about what to do in that scenario as well in this course. So if this is something that you want or you're interested in or you just want to learn more about, I'll leave more information on it down below in the description box. Absolutely no pressure, but it is an option. It is there for you if you are interested. And all of that said, let me know if you feel like you are frequenting any of these stages of grief, or if you've experienced any of these stages of grief, or, just share your experiences. That's what this video is all about. So let me know what your experience is in the comment section down below. If you found this video helpful, validating, and you want more content from a fellow celiac and celiac dietitian, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. And all of that said, my name is Tayler Silfverduk, registered dietitian specializing in celiac, and I will see you when I see you.